Hey guys, welcome back to Beers and War. My name's Grant, also known as FatBrokenRambo, and today we're talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Came out in 2024, like 2 weeks ago. It's at your local theaters now, hopefully, or in maybe by the end of this review, hopefully not. The big stars of the movie is Paul Rudd, Patton Oswalt's in there some bit, and Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts is the old school returning members. Directed by Gil Kennan, and big shout out to the Key Grips, Jack Fleming, David Appleby, Charles Arnold. And currently it sits at a global box office as per Box Office Mojo at $108,378,877 total revenue earned on this film so far. So we'll see where it goes in the next couple weeks. And before we continue, a quick word from today's sponsor.
All right. Roan Industries LLC is a veteran-owned company that strives to provide better gear for better operators. To do this, the products with only necessary moving parts, no excess fluff, just simple functionality. When you go to the checkout, please make sure to put BOW in capital letters to get 50% discount from our brothers over at Roan. All right. Let's get into this. So, there are going to be some spoilers here. So as we said, this is the Ghostbusters 2024 Frozen Empire review. What we have now is the Spengler family returns to the iconic New York City firehouse, and they come up against an ancient artifact, and they're basically trying to prevent a next frozen age. With that being said, there's a lot to unpack in this movie. We're gonna shoot from the hip on this one. We definitely have a lot to say about it. We've gone back and forth amongst ourselves about it. It is basically you're following the Spengler family. So that's the younger girl, and played by McKenna Grace, and her brother and her mother and all those. So they have like a little family now. But we get to see some old heads in it too. So I thought that part was actually pretty cool. But Chris, I'll go ahead and let you start off with this and kind of let us know what you thought of.
So I'd honestly call it like an unspoiler alert, right? Because nothing about this was spoiling except like old food and bad movie magic, right? I'll say all in all, the movie sucked. It did have a couple of highlights, and I'll point out, at least in my opinion, I'll point out a couple of those. Well, maybe more than a couple, but I'll point out a couple right off. So one, debating for first place on the star performer of this movie, it's between the little marshmallow dudes, right? The little mini Stay Puffs, which had about the same amount of stage time or screen time, and I think Ecto One kind of edged it out. So Ecto One probably was the best actor in this movie. They started. She was looking good, seemed to be performing pretty well. She overheated, I think, one time, lost some power or whatever, but that was still way better than everybody and everything else in this movie. The CGI was not even, I would say it was base model CGI, something I could probably throw together without even using Unreal Engine. And yeah, I don't know where all the money went. You said a little over $100 million spent on this. I think that was probably used to pay some of the OG actors salaries. The greater majority of it was, and they probably had about $20,000-$30,000 left over to make the actual movie. Nothing went into script, but hey, solid performance from Ecto One. But that's just on the low end of my review. So yeah, they started out with the star performer up towards the very beginning of the movie. Kind of opened with. To a degree with Ecto One coming out of the gates, them on their way to go fight a giant sea serpent, like eel ghost thing. Yeah, the movie sucks bad.
Okay, all right, I will give you that. The part I won't say the saving grace, but part of it for me was seeing those old faces, and I don't just mean the Ghostbusters. I mean like the library administrator from like the first one that chases him out. Did you see it? What was it? He was literally in this movie, and you recognize him, and that's what made it like so. Like man, they're really like trying to get that nostalgia going. Like man, they really went back to New York City, the old firehouse. Ecto One getting some shine, like Chris was saying, but it was good to kind of see how the characters kind of progressed, like how like Winston actually became like the leader, so to speak, of the Ghostbusters, which I thought was like an odd choice. But he is the oldest, so like if you really look at it, he's like 78. Everyone's like 71,
and the most
70.
jacked.
He's even older than Bill Murray.
Dude,
Yes, he is definitely the best.
I hope I'm in half
He's
his
aged
shape
the
at
best
that
out of
age,
all
if
the
I get to that
Ghostbusters,
age.
including Slimer. Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm not even half in shape now. Like that dude, like he's definitely in better shape than I am now. All right, aka Thick Nick Fury. So what I think was good was they're trying to kind of pass the torch, right? You know, this is not our Ghostbusters, guys. I will say that. If you're of a certain age, this is not our Ghostbusters. This is passing the torch to the next generation. And I will tell you why. I kind of hesitate to give it such a bad rating, even though, like I said, in my opinion, it wasn't that great of a movie. But there was a young kid in the theater who was probably around age 8 or 9. And after the movie was over, I got up, he's sitting there with his mom. I said, hey, little dude, what do you think about this movie? He was like, an enthusiastic thumbs up. I was like, really? He was like, yeah, man, it was so cool. And his mother's like, yeah, this is his second time seeing this movie. He's like, he came with his dad like last week. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so he really enjoyed the movie. Now, did I get into why? No. But guess what? My parents didn't ask me why I liked it back in 1984 when I was 8 or 9 years old. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just inexplicable, but he enjoyed it. Like, it was enough to keep him, keep him interested, to keep him watching it, to wanted to see it twice. I have to give some level of credence to, what they tried to do. And of course, it was for Ivan Reitman. They kind of alluded to this is like one more for you, that kind of thing. But I would say if I were to compare it to like the Afterlife that came out before this, that was the one that was a little bit more for us, right? They brought back Gozer. You got to see like Egon's character come back as a ghost. So with that being said, this is definitely like just trying to get the younger crowd into it, and sometimes we gotta let it go, man. As the old heads, hey man, I get it. This is no longer our guy like Indiana Jones. We had to let him go. They kind of just do a curtain call. This is a curtain call for Ghostbusters. And now the new guys are going to take it over, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Just curious, so for everybody out there that's actually watching this, I didn't get a chance to go see the movie. I had something that came up that was a little bit more important. A lot more important, actually. But I won't get into that. But from a curiosity standpoint, as somebody who hasn't seen the movie, like, and I hate Hollywood's tendency to do nostalgia bait at this point. I think it's an exhausted trope. I look at New Hope, or The Force Awakens Part 2. And I'm just like, man, I was like, all that nostalgia bait. And at first, like, it had been so many years since we had seen those characters, so we were super excited to see them back on the big screen, of course. Indiana Jones, same thing, right? And they seemingly kind of, I don't know, I don't want to use negative terminology, but they've shit all over them, right? And so they're doing this thing where they kind of crap on old legacy characters to kind of elevate the new characters for the next generation. Do you think that this was kind of handled in a respectful manner where, like, the old hands like us that grew up with, Winston and Ray and Egon and those guys can actually take a step back and be like, okay, like, because Eric, you brought up a great perspective, man. Be like, the younger generation really does like it, and maybe we have our niche of films now that we have, a special place in our heart for. Yeah.
Right. So we have our expectations. Our expectations are high.
Right.
Because it was an original. Ghostbusters was an original in 1984. It's been done. Like it's. I'm not gonna say it's hard to come up with new content, but you tend to want to go with what works, right? So they're kind of almost scared to step out and say, okay, let's do something different, something new. Whereas we know this is safe, but safe isn't always good, right? So because you're trying to gain new audience, so you're gonna lose some of the old audience. That's just how it works. You know what I mean? So they should embrace that. Like we saw in the trailers, and we talked about this. They're bringing out Beetlejuice, okay? Like Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, they're all coming back.
I think it's Catherine O'Hara. Yeah, the same one was Kevin McAllister's mom in Home Alone.
Right, there you go. Right, so they're bringing them back. Right, so this is another example of, all right, guys, we're gonna dust these guys off, get them back on the screen, see if we can kind of make that transition instead of just either redoing it or coming up with a different idea. But in this one, I wouldn't say they crapped on the old guys, right? It's just that, the young girl, like they kind of wanted to, because it shows the old guy who's the mayor now, who was in the first one. What was his name?
This man has no dick.
Right. Peck is now the mayor, right? Right, yeah. So, and that's another thing with Bill Murray. Like his lines they just fell flat, man. I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, all right, Bill, by the time it passed you by, bro. But yeah, it kind of shows like he's now the mayor, and he doesn't like. Why is there a 15-year-old girl driving around Manhattan, out swinging out of a door of a hearse? Like he makes sense, right? It's like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like that's kind of dangerous. So they didn't want her to kind of be involved in ghost busting,
I
which is
can
all
kind of
she
see
wanted
his
to do.
concern is,
So this is kind of
parent.
like right. Like as an older person now, like he's actually right. Now when we were 9, oh screw that man, she should be able to bust ghosts all the live long day, and I'm
Absolutely, yeah.
the guy that's making sense, right? But now we're the older guys, right? And the ecto containment system that he was complaining about, literally, just like they packed it so full of ghosts that it had no room for anymore. So it
wait,
did
you
actually
saying
become a
that
hazard.
Wait,
The
so
ecto
Peck was
containment
right
center
the entire
failed,
time?
so Peck was right.
This is like Cobra Kai all over
Peck
again.
was right.
Yeah.
Right? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
You when you're here, you see yourself long enough to become the villain. So like Peck is like he was spot on. I'm like, wow, he actually made perfect sense now. Like 40 years later, but it just goes to show you how perspective and time changes, right? So the same thing with our heroes, perspective and time changes. So our Ghostbusters are passing on to the new Ghostbusters, and it's going to be a 15-year-old girl, it's going to be an 18-year-old boy, it's going to be a mixed family. Okay, you're going to be a stepdad now. It's that kind of thing, right? And kids now, they see that and they accept that. They kind of look for that, that kind of a representation of all types of families. Not everyone has a mom and a dad. Some people have, right?
Absolutely.
And that should be celebrated as well. So I think that was good. And that's why I said I give it a little bit more. I wanted to give it a little bit more of, okay, what were they really trying to do? Even though, like I said, the movie itself, the story kind of all over the place. But, and what's the dude's name? Kumail Nanjiani. Well, he plays Fire God or whatever it is. Like, his character was like out of left field. Like, I don't even know. Like, I know he was the ancestor of one of the characters early on, but the way he just kind of came in and said, oh, here's an ancient artifact I'm going to sell you for $50. So he had no idea what it was, but it was this, thing that literally could have destroyed the world. But he had no idea about it. But he had these powers to control fire and all this other stuff. Kind of like Rick Moranis' character in the first one. But there was none of that possession part, right? So that was kind of weird. And, the other ghost that she was speaking to, she went out there with the chess pieces. And like in the middle of the city at night, like she's out there with sets up a chessboard for 2 people to play. This ghost comes out of nowhere. She's not expecting ghost to show up. They hadn't had prior interactions. She just shows up and starts playing chess with this girl. They have a conversation, and then she become. I can't even say how it ties into the whole thing at the end because it's ridiculous. But it ties into how the main ghost is defeated in the end. It was kind of like, okay. Like they just didn't know how to tie that in other than here's the one match you need, Firestarter, and that was it. I'm like, oh. It was just, the story was bad.
Yeah, so
but
a
I
lot to
think the
unpack in
intent was good.
your guys' conversation there for me. So I'm going to back up quite a bit. So passing down of the torch kind of thing, I would agree if this was the first time that was quote unquote done, right? But didn't they, if I'm not mistaken, they tried to, or that was at least alluded to in the previous one where these young kids were introduced. So I don't think I don't buy passing down, because that theoretically, or maybe even more realistically, would have been done. That torch being passed would have been done in the previous one. So this was just, all right, it should at bare minimum been a continuation of. I think it was more of a cash grab. I think more to your point, Grant, it was one of those things where, hey, they're Hollywood in general is kind of getting into a pattern, and they've been doing it for a while, in my opinion, of, hey, less creativity and let's just, let's do some cash grab stuff. Let's just redo or capitalize on old stuff. So I think this is partly where some of that money went. They were like, look, we got a script already because this has already been done. And let's just go based off of the previous scripts, or, 1 or 2 scripts, and just tweak a couple of things, right? They stole the piece with like the roof getting the laser or the unit blowing and then going through because the unit blew before, and then, it went up through the sky. And I kid you not, if you remember when the hole went through the roof of the firehouse, and that stream was going up into the air, and then you started seeing like kind of ghosts essentially flying off like little comets or whatever. It was a modern day version of that. It almost looked identical, as if they were just like, hey, let's steal the exact footage, maybe change the clouds a little bit, and make the ghosts look a little more refined, and let's push up the sharpness on all the buildings around it and call it a day. So there was a lot of reused material, like from the ghost lady that was in the library, and she was like, and he looks, and then it turns into a ghost and comes after him or whatever. They had the exact footage from the original one. It was just they just took that and said, okay, let's do that same ghost thing. Yeah, I can see where you might be able to might want to say, well, they were reaching back and trying to show the time. Like, yeah, do you use the same footage? So to me, it looked like they were saving a bunch of money to line somebody's pockets, or hand out to whomever, because I don't see the money, that budget, having been spent in the actual movie itself. Yeah, you got to pay your actors, of course, but it looks to me like, yeah, dude, let's just funnel this money off somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty funny to consider these days that $100 million doesn't exactly get you a blockbuster anymore. I mean, James Cameron's Titanic was huge back in the day for having that $100 million budget. Yeah,
yeah, but I
Especially
think,
in New York.
but again, I would offer $100 million. While it might not be able to get you what $100 million would have got you back then, we've had some significant advances in technology, right? So you can buy down some of that with, yeah, you got to pay some guys to do that, but it's not as expensive as, say, going on site, right? Where they shave off some of the costs. Like, well, let's not go to a location. Let's green screen it. Let's CGI it. Now we have the ability to do that at a larger scale, cheaper, and you can even technically, you can do that with home computers. But
All right. Well, I'm not an accountant for the film, right? Like, I'm not gonna get into who spends what and how much what costs. What I want to know
yeah,
is
and I think the end result
what
was
was
that
the end result.
that was
Was
a
it a good movie,
that was a part of it,
regardless
right?
of right? I'm saying
Could have
like, but
been.
it could have been good
Exactly.
with spending $100 million, right? Right. So, but it just wasn't a good movie. So if it was 300 million or 100 million, it just wasn't.
Yeah, so
It
I'm
wasn't
talking
well
about the
done, right?
investment.
So, and I think my biggest issue was more of the story than the effects, right? Okay, the effects, yeah, you can go overboard with it, or you can be underwhelming, or whatever. If the story's good, I can kind of overlook that the same way we did with the original, right? Because the original, if you look at it, like, okay, yeah, these are cheesy, like you don't believe that Stay Puft is really there, but it was a good enough movie where you didn't care that it looked campy
yeah,
or
but
it
you're
looked a
investing
little,
in you're
off
investing in
because the
characters.
story was good enough to
Yeah.
carry.
Yeah, but that goes.
Right, exactly. So like the amount of money you spend has
No, I disagree.
nothing to do
I
with how
disagree.
good the movie is. Like if you look at the first Deadpool, the first
It
Deadpool
was like
was
around
well
60.
under $100 million, I think. Um,
Yeah,
right, and it made an astronomical
yeah,
amount
but
of money, and I think it was a very well done movie.
yeah,
And
but I
they're on their
disagree.
third one,
If you
so
think
yeah,
about what
like
you
the
said,
money
is you said
doesn't really
money.
matter.
Literally, what you said is money has nothing to do with the quality of the movie, which I disagree with. It may not have as much to do with it as how invested you are in it and the actors you get, but money definitely does have something to do with the quality of the movie, because if you have no money, you have no movie. So my part of my point is, with even with $100 million at today's rates, because I'm not a banker and I'm not trying to be their banker for it, $100 million they could have. And again, part of what we're doing, I mean, at least in my opinion, is we're, as content creators and giving our critiques on stuff. It's armchair quarterbacking, right? That's part of what it is, because we're saying,
That's
hey, you know
fair.
what, they could have done. So, I got to be honest and fair with, hey, with that kind of a budget, I think, because I'm not making the movie, but I give my opinion on it, and I think with that kind of a budget, yeah, you could have got a couple of guys with some decent home computers. You could have blown away the CGI that they had in there, because I've seen better quality from home computers. And if you dedicate out of $100 million money into a good script, because this is obviously a piss poor at best script. Again, we know there's some high caliber actors there, some actors, and whether or not they decided to put some effort into it or not, there's some good actors. Even some of these newer, younger actors and actresses are pretty good in their own right. But I could see, at least from my opinion, I could see that, hey, that's a good actor or a good actress. They were given a crappy script, but they did what they could with it, and I think that was part of it. So it's one sliver.
All right, do you
That
think with
no,
better
no, no,
CGI the
no. So
movie would have been better for you?
Avatar.
you're conflating.
Well, because we're
You're
talking about the
conflating.
money, right? So
You're conflating. No, no.
with a better CGI, Well, right, because we're talking about how much money we're spending on it. So,
That's
oh,
but
the,
what you're
the
doing is
CGI was crappy,
you're
right?
conflating
You agree with
the
that?
whole thing with just that, right? So it's not just that. It is essentially like if you build a house, it's not built on one single stone, right? It's multiple things. That's just one pillar of it.
Yeah, it's
One
an
pillar
element
being
of
the
what makes
CGI
the film
stuff.
successful.
One, yeah, and I've already mentioned another pillar being a crappy script, right? So there are multiple things, which is like you mentioned at the beginning. There's a lot to unpack on this. I think there's a lot to unpack in this movie, but that is one. I just happened to bring that up. That is one of the things. Uh, Again, the script, I think it was piss poor from, hey, whether or not they knew where they were going with it, the intro of the fire, keeper or whatever dude, like, I got where he came from. I think they did a bad job in the scripting in that introduce how they introduced him was piss poor. They could have had a little more backstory to him, or they could have brought him in earlier and could have shown that okay, yeah, he's the. So I'm saying there's a multitude
Okay,
of
right,
things.
and I agree with you, but I don't think that has anything to do with the money, right?
No,
Like that's just bad writing, right?
that's
So
part of it.
all I'm saying is the movie itself, I think, was it could have been better, right? I don't know if money would have made it better, but what they did with what they had is what you got.
Yep.
It's just not a great movie. It's not something that I would have really have expected from Ghostbusters, especially if this is the last ride. Like they do kind of allude to a possible, an additional movie because there's a trailer at the end, but it was kind of underwhelming because we talked about that. Like these little Stay Puft Marshmallow dudes. What is the real like? What is the
Merchandising.
point? Like they were just like they didn't.
That's why
There you
Grogu
go.
stuck
That's
around
probably
as long
what
as
it
he
is.
did.
Like the
Yeah.
little
Well, and
green
that's
alien
why-
from Toy
bastard.
Story. Right.
That's
And it's like
that's why they were the
wasn't nothing to
second best
movie.
actors in the movie, right?
But so I mean, to your
They're
point,
like
Chris,
little
though,
guys.
with the
Yeah, what's up?
CGI, man, like one of the things I'm interested in is like once everyone keeps talking about is Godzilla minus one. They did it on like a very small budget, but the special effects are incredible and the story is awesome. They're like, this movie should have. I've heard some other critics mention that it should have won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. I
What
can't
did
wait
it-
to see it.
What did
and it's
its numbers do?
I think it was made for $15 million.
And
It
what
won one Academy Award. And I think it was for foreign film. Hey, Chad, if you got it, or put in the comments, would you, man? That'd be fantastic.
But what did it
But
make?
it cleared over, I think, 100 million.
Okay, so I think that speaks to part of my point. And again, I think where it was
And that's
conflated
and that would be considered, while it is an established property of Godzilla, it is still a foreign movie because I believe it was a Japanese film company that made it.
yeah, and like I said, that's kind of part of my
no.
point in conflating it, right? Is that I'm not saying the budget would have made it better. What I'm saying is you had a good budget. That should not have been a hindrance, where I think that somehow it was to a degree into some of the decision making processes. So again, being one of, I don't know, call it 10 pillars. I mean, I'm sure we can find 10 things about this that made this movie what it was. But I think with, like you, I mean, you brought up a good point, right? Hey, they did 15 million and they did a good job. And it sounds like, because I haven't seen it, I haven't even seen the trailer, but it sounds like that might be based in, not completely, but based in, they spent the money well, right? So they invested in good CGI, whether it's, good dudes that do good CGI work or whatever, and good engines, and into a good script, I'm sure, and good acting, and tying it all together. But that's still, to me, that's like the storytelling in the script. But while money is not the thing that makes it, money is one of those 10 pillars, right? So yeah, if you got, especially when you got a budget, a decent budget.
Just to make sure I got my facts right, according to IMDb, Godzilla minus one had a budget of $15 million, and then according to Box Office Mojo, we're looking at a worldwide box office of $112,795,473. So that budget was next to nothing, and
Yeah,
I've heard it's nothing but
shoestring.
one of the best movies of the year.
It
of
sounds
last
like
year.
the guys
Right.
who actually made it were
Right,
probably
yeah.
vets, right? Do more with less.
Maybe, but I mean,
They were like, look,
it's a
we got.
Japanese film company, so who knows?
Yeah, they're like, you guys, you ain't getting no more money. Yeah,
Let's get the key
but
information.
and then to get back to another one of your points that you brought up with like the girl in the park with the thing, like, yeah, I agree, man. It didn't, but there were a whole bunch of pieces in there where things would just get introduced, but you didn't see the introduction. You know what I'm saying? Like coming and the thought into it. It just all of a sudden she's in the middle of, isn't that what's that big park in New York?
Oh, Central Park.
But yeah, it was
I don't
like
even know
a
if it was
Central
Central
Park
Park.
thing, but that's what it to me it kind of alluded to that, or it seemed like it might be. So in New York, the middle of the night, and she walks to a park by herself, 15-year-old girl,
Totally fine.
and yeah, and sits down and starts playing chess. Doesn't look over her shoulders, nothing, whatever. There's nobody else around, not even foot traffic anywhere in the background. And then a ghost starts playing. Like, all right, what's going on? You
Yeah,
could
but
have
for that
introduced.
universe, she had a proton pack strapped on probably for the first half of the movie. I'm assuming. So I mean, at that point, all reality's
Yeah, but I
lost,
mean,
anyways.
you would think that there would be. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some of our other movies, like Nobody, where hey, they're driving around. There's no traffic. There's nobody around. And then we had another movie where there was a similar thing where you would expect there to be something, and obviously they cleared it because they're filming the movie. But it was another one of those things like, where is everything?
Empty
Like, there's
streets.
nothing,
Yeah.
and no reason for it. But they really should have. I would say to make this a fair separation from previous ones, they should have went ahead and just called this like instead of Ghostbusters, Ghost Smashers, and made some different people. And for those, yeah. So for those who know,
Smash.
Sounds
no.
terrible.
What? Well, hold on. So
Ghost Smashers.
for those who know, no, because Ghost Smasher was actually the original name intention from when they came up with the concept for Ghostbusters. It wasn't Ghostbusters. It got changed. So they should have just went ahead and said, look, let's just call it Ghostmasters. We got some connection to the real thing back from, when those guys actually wrote the original script, but that name got changed and that wasn't allowed to be the name for whatever reason, just like they didn't have the viewing thing where they could view the ghosts. I think if you guys remember the cartoon that came out a couple
The real
years later.
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Yeah, they could
Great,
go and
actually.
look through a little eye thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a couple,
there's
and then the
multiple versions
game,
The
and
cartoon.
so you could go and look into kind of a
Yeah, yeah.
viewing thing and see that. That was actually something they wanted in the original Ghostbusters, and it got cut out because the amount of money that it was going to cost and time, because they would have had to gin up all these different ghosts because they would have to show them. So they're like, yeah, we don't have enough time, and then that, the amount of money it's going to cost to generate these hundreds or thousands of ghost silhouettes. Nah, can't that. But it was actually original. So they had there's a bunch of little things like that. But they should have just completely separated it. Yeah, it's not our Ghostbusters. I don't think it's anybody's Ghostbusters. It just wasn't Ghostbusters. Should have just been Frozen Empire.
There's kids out there that love it. There's kids out there that love it. So I would
All
say,
right.
it's the next generation, guys. But it was. If you guys are gonna go see it, like I said, let us know what you think in the comments, and just kind of how you feel, and try to be open minded. Like with anything you go see, try to be open minded. Try to maybe understand.
It's a really
who
good
it's
point,
designed
actually.
for, what it's designed to
Yeah,
attract.
you're right.
And everything's not gonna be for us. It's just the way it is.
But hey, man, that kid
Just
got
the
some
way it
enjoyment
is,
out of it, and you know what? That's all right too. Oh yeah,
It
nice.
was an exuberant thumbs up. It was like, it was like, he was like, he had a Godzilla cup. Like he saw Godzilla, I think earlier. He had a
Good for him.
fantastic like spring break, dude. I'm like, I haven't really seen like Godzilla and King Kong.
That movie
He's
is
already
blowing
on
the
movie
box office
3.
out of the water right now.
Like, I'm just getting here.
Yeah, it's like 100,
Yeah,
119
is it?
million.
Yeah, I don't even want to get
we're
into
not
how
talking
you get a
about
prosthetic arm to a gorilla.
Well,
That's the size of it.
I mean,
12-story
fair enough,
building.
but then
But yeah.
let's say we
What
apply
if
that
rehab
same
is
logic
purpose?
well, let's say we apply
You
that
do a
same
screen
logic
trip.
and say, well, there's some kid out there. It's for them. It's not for us. Like I said, I would agree with you on that, only to an extent. I would say while it's not for us, we're the ones reviewing it, and my when I'm reviewing it for from my experience. Not that that's awesome that the kid liked it. I'm actually excited that like kids aren't hating going to the movies, because that's good. Give them a little more experience similar to what we got with regards to going to movies and having popcorns, and continue that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if I'd seen 20 kids there that said, hey, it was an awesome movie, I would have given them positive reinforcement. Like, yeah, that's awesome. Glad you liked it. And I still would have came back and gave an honest review of it, being that, yeah,
That's
while
what
that
it
kid
is.
enjoyed it, the
Yep.
movie sucked because I'm the one that's reviewing it for, from my perspective, not from that kid's perspective. And one of the worst things, not the only, the worst thing, and I think one of the worst things you can do in a movie like this is you have the antagonist, and you have the protagonist, right? And so the villain in this because you expect, and you look at the Ghostbusters past to some degree, they they've done a decent job with, hey, you got the big villain and there's a good fight scene. It sucked. The fight scene sucked. The villain kind of came out of, I mean, you kind of knew about it or whatever, but they really didn't have any like the real build up to it or whatever. I mean, the villain got there to the dang on firehouse, and after being blasted with a couple of their packs, proton packs or whatever. Yeah, just everybody just started to be able to turn it on the guy with like very little resistance. I mean, he tried to resist, but the guy with the match, yeah, I mean, he just kept blowing his cold breath at everybody. He froze them, and then, what was the piece that made him kind of fall back? It was the ghost girl came with the match or whatever, and everything started to change. The guy, the fire.
Yeah,
what's that? Of course, like
fight scene. Well, that's a different fight scene than what I saw. Like, so basically, it was they're going at him with the proton packs, right? But it doesn't affect this one, right? So he's like basically freezing the streams and they're busting on the ground like glass, right?
Oh yeah,
so she comes out with the souped up proton pack, and she's basically starting to work, right? It works, but then he's kind of overpowering her, so he's starting to freeze her. Then that's when the fire guy comes and adds his fire. So it's like, things are looking bad, like bleak, like she's gonna lose, and then he comes and helps, and then the two of them start to win, and then the family kind of come together and they all grab the proton pack, so they're all as a family fighting this ghost. So it was more than a simple fight scene. Like, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man didn't even last that long in the first one. Like, they basically
100%.
turned him into hot marshmallow, and that was it. So it wasn't like a big fight scene back then either.
When you go and watch it, if you compared the two, at least in my opinion, if you compared the fight scene with that, with the ice demon thing, to Stay Puft, even though you're 100% right, he got blasted, blew out. The excitement, the everything that was going on with it was there with Stay Puft, regardless of even if the fight lasted less time than this one. This one was just kind of meh. It was very, mundane. It was bland. The guy shows up to the fire. Yeah, I do. He shows up to
the first Ghostbusters.
But again, I mean,
he was climbing up the building. Like, he didn't even get a hand on him.
When him so all right.
Aim for the flat top. That's all I remember. And then, like, they cross the streams, and next thing you know, the hot marshmallow falling down on my man's head. That was like that was the whole fight. From the
lead up to the fight to the end, where the marshmallows raining down on people, you were engaged. And I'm only speaking for myself, but you were engaged. It was exciting, kind of a thing. The lead up to this one was like, okay, there was icicles coming up out of the ocean onto the beach. Cool. Some cars and stuff got stuck with ice. And he shows up at the firehouse, and he's on the inside. He's maybe, 15 feet, 20 feet or whatever, kind of a tall. And then the fights ended in like, a minute or two or whatever, actual real time. And it just was very lackluster. When you go back to Stay Puft, like, he's coming through the city, like stomping on cars and there was a lot more to it. And then there was the fight when he's climbing the building, and you know what I'm saying? So it was just, well, that's why I said, like, the build up, right? The intro to him getting to the fight, and then the after being the explosion. This one lacked all of that excitement for me. And the fire guy sucked so bad. It was like he started off doing this with like a lighter going to a candle, and then all of a sudden, once she lit the match, right? You're talking, maybe a few hours. Yeah, a few hours later, she lights a match, and he catches like that flame, because he didn't really master his flame yet, right? So all of a sudden now he catches it, and he's like a Dragon Ball Z character. He's got like the flame here. He's like, I almost was waiting for a Kamehameha, right? So he's just like, and then all of a sudden he's blasting the thing like he's, it's been in all the time. He's kind of mastered or whatever. Yeah, he sucked. All in all, that fight sucked. It sucked. The best part of it was I would say the girl actually doing the copper thing, dipping it in copper. I thought that was creative. That they were like, all right, hey, the packs aren't good enough. Brass and copper used to hold these things back in the day better. So she was like, oh, melted down the fire pole is what they did, because that was made of brass, I think, or one of the two. And she put that onto essentially the internal components, which, boosted it up. And they gave her a little more, and he was still able to kind of fight back against that. But all in all, yeah, the movie blew.
Okay.
Blew. Really, really bad. Whoever did this, man, you guys suck, man. Just go back and redo that over. Yeah, that was horrible.
Do you want him to redo it over?
No, that was like the military over. Like,
oh, okay,
hey,
got it.
Passing off comms. Over. Yeah, you guys suck.
Eric, you got any final thoughts, man, before we go into ratings? All right, man.
But I got
so,
high
hey,
ratings.
We've reached the end of our video, and I'm going to bow out of the vote on this one. So it's going to go over to Eric and then to Chris. So, Eric, take us away, man.
Yeah, like I said, it was bad. Was it the worst movie I've ever seen? No. But I'm going to give it
scale of 1 to 10 roadhouses.
I'll give it 4.
Yeah, we should start doing like a little image, like little roadhouses. You cut it off. Like if it's a half a roadhouse.
There you go,
Monopoly house.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go.
Well, after that last tirade, I pretty much know where you're going.
Oh my goodness, man! Unfortunately we had a general consensus that we can't go negative numbers because we can't use 0. So I tried to jump that and go negative, but the guy said I can't do that. So I can't give it any higher than a 1. Worst movie that I've ever seen? I'm going to say no. Worst movie I've seen in probably the past 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years? Most definitely. Horrible, horrible movie. I've seen better like clips on YouTube of stuff that ain't movies. Yeah, they sucked. You guys really bombed this one, man. And I would say your numbers seem to be predicting that. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Damn. Well, not sure when I'm going to catch it now, but I'll make it a priority.
You'll probably catch it like COVID. That's what it is. It's like COVID.
Oh, man. Well, if that's the case. It'll take 3 weeks of my life. So, all right, guys. That's what we got for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Thanks for checking us out, and appreciate your time. You guys get a chance, like, subscribe, ring the little notification bell, and throw a comment in, man. Add in, see if there's anything out there that you want us to review, and we'll see it in the comments, and we'll add it to our master list and try to fill it in where we can. So, appreciate your time.